Send me your bio. Hello, and welcome to everyone in person and online to the next installment in our JadaTalks speaker series. Today, we are talking about getting plugged into the virtual world of art. The internet is the only platform an enterprising artist needs to sell their works in the 21st century. Beyond graphic design, many artists now create both digital pieces and artwork that references internet culture. Furthermore, many young artists today are digital natives that have always lived in a hybrid socialization structure that incorporates both online and in-person interaction, making internet culture a universal reference point for this new generation of artists. Today, I am joined by international visual artist, editor, and entrepreneur, and co-founder of Jada, Dana Blickensderfer. She graduated from the University of South Florida with a bachelor's degree in mass communication with a focus in public relations. She is an alum of the New York Studio School with a focus in two-dimensional practice. And I am also joined by Teresa Wilkins, PhD, the director of the Lipa Ratner Museum of Art, where she serves as the fourth director in the museum's nearly 20-year history. As part of St. Petersburg College, the museum, under Wilkins' leadership, strives to advance the role of art and art education in the Tampa Bay region. Since her appointment in 2019, Wilkins has held the museum to realign itself with the mission of St. Petersburg College and embrace its founding principles of inspiring creativity, exploration, and enlightenment, connecting the community through the power of art. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I'm really happy to have you here. We have Dana in person and Teresa joining us via Zoom.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's just hop right into the questions, shall we? Both of you, what are some of the first examples you can recall of artwork being created digitally?
So Teresa, I'm not an art historian, but Miss PhD can maybe give us some facts. Because digital art has been around a long time. It's not anything new, right? It's just it's exposed, I think, in a new platform, and that's why there's a lot of eyeballs. So what do you think, Teresa?
Well, number one, I couldn't agree with you more. Really the first sort of digital art that I ever encountered was when I was growing up. I remember on the news watching Harold Cohen, who was this really cool sort of avant-garde digital artist who used a robot to create drawings. I remember watching that as a kid and just thinking, this is the future. Like any minute now, we're gonna fly around in cars and we're gonna live the life of the Jetsons.
Yeah.
You know, he was really sort of the beginning of sort of the canon of digital art. And since then, we've had so many artists working in, you know, all different disciplines, using all kinds of media, and it's amazing to see where we are now. And yeah, we're getting all this attention for digital arts and artists, really because of everything that's happened this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's just it's been on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Times 100, which is really great for the digital space and, you know, reassessing the way we see art.
Right. So, and then maybe this is more of a question for Dana, but what was your first foray into creating art or showcasing art in a virtual environment?
Yeah, so I personally love painting on canvas. That's my go-to. As no plug, but my work is right behind us. I didn't do that on purpose, I promise. But I don't digitally do a lot of art. I make some, you know, performance videos, but it's technically not like digital art.
Yeah.
So I use it as more of a tool in my toolbox to market, because my background's marketing. So seeing this happen this year, it's just, I think 2 years ago, I started doing these virtual art shows because after I left art school, I kind of missed, even though Florida has a great and thriving art community, plug the Lipa Ratner, I still miss my New York friends and just getting off the subway, going to a show any day, Monday through Friday. It's just always things happening. So I wanted to keep that connection and create that environment, so I would ask some of my art school friends if we could virtually put a show on. I'll stream it, or I'll post it on my YouTube channel, and they're like, okay. So that was like 2 years ago, and then this year, some of the people that I streamed with, even then, they were like, oh my God, I can't believe you, what timing, right? So now it's such a great opportunity to create these virtual art exhibit environments, and really take it to the next level, because everyone's craving that connection and seeing that it can be done online.
Right.
And if Teresa wants to add, she's been doing a lot of great things with this year too.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm not an artist myself. I'm actually quite terrible at creating art.
Not true.
But
Not
this
true.
year really propelled us forward in so many of our goals, which had always been about sort of increasing access to the arts.
Yeah.
And museums as a whole, I think, have always been sort of slow to change, right? If you look at sort of the history of what museums and galleries have thought of as their function, they've been really sort of slow to respond to like big societal changes. This year was really sort of this extreme moment that pushed us forward into the 21st century as a museum field. We've been talking about like digital art and online access since like the late 90s, early 2000s, but we've just been so slow to adapt. This year, we at Believer Ratner were really sort of the first in the Tampa Bay area in Florida to get online with digital exhibitions, with digital programming. I mean, within about 10 days of shutting down, we were immediately online trying to pick up where we left off. It was just so important for us to be able to continue to engage with the community. Really now more than ever, everyone needs the visual arts. So it's been sort of great to use all the different platforms that are out there that are available. Social media, definitely, obviously, of course. Zoom, which many people sort of never used before 2020. But also some of these sort of like old school tech things like Python and HTML to sort of build out all these different IT platforms for us to be able to create programs and engage in certain ways.
Yeah. So often it seems that artwork that is created and consumed digitally does not get the same respect as artwork that is created in a more traditional, tangible way. Do you think that 2020's accelerated transition into the digital space will help usher in a new era of appreciation for digital art?
Teresa, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. I certainly hope so. Again, it's always been a little hard to sort of like break into the canon, right? We've seen it in like every new art movement even. When the Impressionists first burst onto the scene, people were like, what is that? You're crazy, that's not art.
Yeah.
I really hope, I believe that everything that we've seen now has really shown the sort of range, the amount of tools that are out there in terms of creating digital art and just how amazing digital art can be. We've actually been working with an artist in St. Petersburg, Florida, who is a traditional sort of oil painter who paints in a very cool surrealist style. And he's been taking his paintings and scanning them, creating like these 3D sort of lenticulars all online. And it's amazing to see that he's moving all of his art online to use these new technologies to sort of push the boundaries of art further.
Yeah.
So I do think this really sort of accelerated acceptance of the canon of sort of fine art and of digital arts, and we're also experiencing all kinds of new, really cool art on the scene.
Yeah, that's a good point. We did some virtual art shows right when it started, when everything happened, March, April, May, even to June. And a lot of the artists that are more traditional were forced into this digital sphere as a medium. Even me, I didn't really do digital art, and I created these really great. I have one exhibiting today, but there's a couple artists that they told me their stories where they had to quarantine and they had to leave their place, and they were in a hotel for like 4 months, and she had book art, and then she had to then recreate art in her studio. And then I have this one artist who couldn't have access because of quarantining to his studio. He did everything digitally and created these really cool video art. And yeah, there's a push because there's when you're forced into this funnel, then all this amazing stuff is going to come out. And I think it's only just beginning.
Yeah.
And especially, like she said, how museums, talking about online viewing rooms, because that's the trendy word right now. Viewing rooms is the thing that people have stuck with when they talk about seeing work online. It's nothing new. We've talked about doing this for a long time, but now that we're forced into it, I think, we've seen 5 to 7 different types of apps and ranges, but I think it's just the beginning because people are developing stuff even today to enhance what we saw a couple of months ago, and then, I'm hopeful that we can go back to a new normal, but I think it will always be an impact to the digital world that will never be the same, and it will coexist together very well.
Excellent. And that kind of feeds into our next question a little bit. When artwork that was made physically is then translated into a virtual viewing environment, so much of the sense of its dimensions and scale are lost. That being said, what new opportunities for the way we experience and interact with art do virtual environments provide us with?
So I guess I'll start. So there's a lot of limitation when in the beginning of quarantine, when people say virtual reality, it doesn't really mean, virtual reality was really like an Oculus, a headset, but people don't have those items, so they maybe put their work online.
Right.
And the artwork is then viewed in pictures, which is not the same. Granted or not, we're all artists, we're all in the art world, and you're always going to want to see the work in person, so there is a limitation, but the level of rapid enhancements and productions happening this year is really exciting.
Yeah.
The way that you can view things and turn your head and kind of see it full range. There's 2 years ago there was Matterports where you can walk in and dollhouse view the museums.
Mm-hmm.
The national, the museums in New York all have that feature on their website.
Mm-hmm.
There's many ways to get super close and see the granular pieces and details of the artwork. Yes, it's never the same, but I feel like the way our habits of viewing will change. Just getting comfortable with a new language and a new way to view art. It's just a change, and no one likes change in the beginning, but it's evolving, and I think we can appreciate both sides, because otherwise then we wouldn't have art right now, and we all would, we crave art and the art community to keep progressing, and this is what we have to do.
How do you think something has the technology caught up to the point yet, in your experience at least, where something you can kind of see this installation behind Dana here with the backpacks? This is something that's very three-dimensional.
Yeah.
It has, the backpacks are all kind of inflated in different places and everything, and it's something that you I feel like you have to be in person to really get the sense of, and if you tried to look at this in VR, it might just look completely two-dimensional, and you don't even really get the same effect as you would.
Yeah, there's a lot, there's B2B, galleries and museums are having the budget to afford to build products like that, where you can make a 3D environment, but artist to artist, there's limitations because there's no free app that you can hey, let me upload my work to have other people view it in a digital environment way, and I think that's coming. It is.
Well, and then the other question is too, it's then how does something like this translate? Because even if you do have the capability of having it three-dimensional online, is there a special kind of camera that you bring in for that, or does it all have to be completely recreated digitally?
Yeah, you can create the blueprint raw online, but if you can also do both. You can put in cameras, create the world and then put it online, or you can build it from scratch online.
That's what Jamie used for here, right? Or for international.
And Teresa, have you guys at the museum had to play with cameras and stuff like that online yet?
Yeah, so you mentioned big museums have a budget, right? They can sort of afford to invest in all kinds of new technology.
Yeah.
We're a small museum, but we have to be really like engineering instructors and some of the like digital design instructors in our college. We're going to be sort of debuting our 3D gallery walkthroughs and stuff on our website soon.
Oh, that's exciting.
And building those sort of from scratch because we can't afford the kinds of programs that a lot of them. So it's been really sort of difficult for us to make sure that we're providing multiple ways for people to engage.
Yeah.
And I think that it is really hard to get the same sort of experience when you're looking at something on a computer in real life. It's hard to sort of recreate that. And so, in my opinion, our responsibility when we're creating these virtual environments isn't to try and recreate that experience, but instead to create a really meaningful experience in and of itself for the virtual museum goer. So we like to look at art as being sort of an object that we can use as a window onto larger societal questions or historical points. So we're really excited to be able, in our virtual sort of tours of the museum, to, if you want to click on that piece of art and bring up sort of related topics to pull articles on and read, or see related artworks or related artists. The digital platform offers us all this opportunity to really have this greater access to information when you're right there looking at the piece, versus in an art museum, you're not going to immediately be like, oh, let me grab this article about, Van Gogh's mental illness. Like, we're not going to really talk about all that, understanding the painting. Online, it's a little different. So there's a lot of sort of things that we can get out of a virtual experience that we can't get out of a physical experience of going to a museum. Not the least thing, of course, just pure access, right? Like, I can't jump on a plane and go to the Met whenever I want. I wish, but I can't. So being able to visit online and see all the kinds of artworks that I'm interested in online is a really satisfying experience.
That's a great point. That's a great point you mentioned about the educational piece, because if we see it, pessimistic, if we're always optimistic and see the good and the opportunity from the situation, there's people that go to the museums and they may not know, they just walk past art, you know how you have the headsets and you take a tour. There's such a greater opportunity to get that aha moment and, oh my God, I didn't know. And you learn through the virtual because you have all these references, maybe some audio, and you're forced to kind of be immersed, which is immersed in it, versus, you're a lot distracted a lot, possibly in person, or just, maybe not knowing what to do when you go to a museum. Sometimes it's intimidating for people who don't go often.
I think especially for like a museum as opposed to maybe a gallery as well. Part of the reason I'm so fond of the Lipa Ratner Museum is because the first time I went, I had this incredible docent. And a docent really shapes your experience at a museum. A good docent will have you with all these different insights that you would never have had before. It's so easy to just, that's a cool painting,
like
keep walking, right? And I think these new virtual viewing rooms, or whatever the hell you want to call it, VR, they really provide museums and more kind of educational institutions to really kind of force feed more of that education than they would if you were just coming in person, if that makes sense.
Which is great for the overall society, learning more about art. I think that's good.
And well, I think I don't think anyone would regret having that too. I think it makes the experience a lot more enjoyable. Some people might be a little shy of a docent sometimes, but I think you have one good docent tour and then you're hooked. Every time you go, it's like, where are the docent tours?
That's amazing.
I think you bring up a really good point. I think historically museums have had to sort of battle with inaccessibility, this sort of threatening sort of facade, right? We've always sort of temple-like buildings that if you aren't sort of like already initiated into that art world, they can really be people.
Yeah.
And docents are a great sort of icebreaker because they're like typically, an older person who can donate their time and volunteer and really sort of help guide you and make you feel more at ease if you're going to a museum. Online museums across the country have been using, there's an algorithm that's known as the digital docent, and museums across the country have been sort of plugging that into their online exhibitions. So if you can see that you're looking at, say, all these different sort of, let's say, Picassos, we might suggest, based on your viewing history, just like maybe you want to look at this other artist who is of the same time frame or interested in the same subjects.
Yeah.
And so it does sort of like help open the window to greater exploration for people.
Yeah, for sure. So, last question. The pandemic absolutely accelerated our transitions into these new digital spaces we find ourselves in. How do you two imagine virtual programming for art evolving in the next 5 years?
Oh, I think it's just starting. I'm so excited because I personally am working with the team to develop some cool things coming next year that's, for artists by artists, where you can have your own virtual exhibiting experience. I think, I'm hopeful, we're all hopeful that the COVID will be over, vaccines will come, but it could be another year to two. But even so, I feel like this just bursted a whole new platforms and ranges to experience art. And I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see more and more developed platforms, applications, updates. I've been using some online, it's not a breakaway from the traditional because I'm still a fan of traditional. I mean, we've got Therese here with the museum, but I hope it's a great combination and ecosystem where they're working together, just to share art and experience art in different ways.
Yeah. And what about you, Teresa?
Yeah, so I consider myself an optimist, and so I really hope that things get better quickly.
Yeah.
Worst case planning, however, does have us sort of thinking about another year of restricted physical access to a lot of places, restrictions on travel, things like that. So I do see museums and galleries continuing this trend of sort of expanding their online offerings and expanding the different ways in which they're offering online experiences. There is sort of this worry, I think, about museums, especially sort of slipping back into old ways as soon as things reopen. But I hope, and here at the Lieber Ratner, we're really committed to continuing to expand our online offerings. Where we are in northern Pinellas County in Florida, we're really close to some of the sort of targeted areas that are economically sort of disenfranchised in the state. And so for us to be able to send digital docents or virtual tours to these schools that can't afford to travel to us is a really amazing opportunity for us and for these kids. And we've been able to engage with almost 10,000 students despite the lockdown throughout the year because of that, which is a higher number than we were able to do in that same time frame last year. So for us, we're really committed to continuing to expand, and like Dana, we've got some big plans for some really cool new technologies next year. And we are really looking forward to being able to utilize all these new updates and developments to continue to expand access to the arts for everyone.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, wouldn't you think the reach, the money the museums can save, the possible reach that, I know some of the figures and statistics that Art Basel, for example, is getting online just by being online. is more higher, is so much higher than people traveling here. So I would think that, not going back into old ways, that museums would want to continue to use both tools because of the cost savings, and then you can put them into programming.
Yeah.
You can help and educate so much farther online. Yes, there's also definitely want to be back to normal. Like the joke is like actual reality. People want to be back to being closer, hugging, like of course. But I think the business side, it makes sense to keep online programming.
Yeah.
I think it can be hard for institutions to try and leverage some of the online programs for revenue streams. So I do think it's been challenging for museums to try and figure out how do we continue to sort of diversify our revenue and have these online programs. So I think that's sort of where the danger lies for museums sort of slipping back into their old ways. I'd like to think that there's enough community support out there to sustain our museums as well as allow museums to offer these virtual programs.
Yeah.
And I, like both of you said, I really personally would like to see this pandemic over and have, a lot of the physical restrictions lifted once again. But that being said, I think there are a lot of really valuable takeaways that we can take from this experience that we've all collectively had since the pandemic, where, say for instance, even beyond the art world, in the United States, you're lucky if you get 1 week of paid time off a year, right? But if you have the option to telecommute, then when your grandma in New Jersey is sick, you can go visit her and telecommute while still getting the job done, getting paid, but then also being able to not physically be there.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually, once we do get past COVID-19, I think it's actually going to be very good for the overall quality of life, especially for people here in the United States.
Yeah, and we were just listening to another panel earlier, and Darren was saying, it's a lot about just ages, like the age and life evolves. And to your comment about the Jetsons earlier, the kids now using iPads and they're on YouTube watching streamers, they are more sucked into this online world, and they're not gonna, the museum, the local papers that are going under, there's not as much physical papers because they're just gonna look digital. So the ages that evolve over time is going to be interesting to see, us keeping these online programs and, doing in person, because you're going to have that age gap, and people that are I have my nephew that's better at an iPad tablet than I am.
Yeah.
And he's 4.
Right.
And I'm like, what? How do you know how to do all this buttons? How'd you get to that app?
Well, it's crazy to me, especially when you talk about a 4-year-old using a tablet. I remember when my nieces were that age, they could not take a pen and physically write their name or write something down, but they could type.
That is crazy to me.
How does that even make sense? They're a Peppa Pig. It's how do you know how to do that?
Write it down.
No one taught you how to do that. You just figured it out. And they can't. It's so crazy.
It's their extension of their body, right? And that's another reason why I think digital art will increase. Our iPhone is the way our basically our perspective and our lens for life, and we're always taking pictures, and then we make these videos, we make this art, and I think it's only going to catapult because we are digital in a sense. It's insane, So I just look back.
I'm really lucky that we're part of St. Petersburg College for many reasons, but that is definitely high on the list. I didn't even have a computer till I was in college, so I'm pretty much Stone Age as far as they're concerned. So it's really helpful to have college students who sort of bounce ideas off of and get feedback on as we're developing these digital access tools for them.
Oh yeah, that's true.
People are this is stupid. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad I asked you.
Yeah, you better utilize all those focus groups. That's genius. What do you think? What I think is cool is that's not cool. That's so true, Teresa. That's awesome. I'm glad you have that at your fingertips.
Yes.
I know that I'm too old for knowing what's free. So it's really cool to have a free focus group essentially of the college students, and
Yeah.
and we even have this like high school students that are enrolled in college are on our campus. So like all the way through, lifelong learners. So it's great. We get this great sort of snapshot of actual society who can let us know what works and what doesn't.
Yes, that is important to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Well, Teresa, Dana, thank you both so much for joining us today for this conversation. It was very insightful, and it was a pleasure speaking with both of you. Everyone online, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to go to JadaArtFair.com to check out the rest of the programming we have set up for the weekend. We hope to see you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Teresa.
Take care.
Bye.